Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Jedd Fisch, the Washington Huskies, they're getting a little bit of revenge on the Michigan Wolverines. And we said heading into this football game, Michigan's the top 10 team according to the AP poll heading into this game. You look at Washington, there was a reason that they were a 1.5 favorites heading into this one. This is a very good Washington team that where you look at the two losses that they had on the season, they should have won both of those football games. Jedd Fisch has done a brilliant job early with this Washington program. And although it's been frustrating to start the season for Washington, I think it's very clear that this program's under good hands with Coach Jedd Fisch. Until what a night for the Washington fans, right? Not only winning this football game, but seeing Kayla DeBoer, Alabama, go down to Vanderbilt. Really good night for Washington. Going to get into a few takeaways from the Washington side. Also talk about our Michigan Wolverines now. Before we get into it, as always, shout out to you guys. And look, to the Washington fans, even going back to when Michigan won that football game a little less than 12 months ago, y'all continued to show a ton of support to the boys, even though we were Michigan fans. Appreciate y'all rocking with us. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And I think much more importantly, Washington fans, Michigan fans, would love to hear some of your takeaways in the comment section. Dill, I'll let you start. Let's start with this Washington offense where we said heading into this football game, tackling in space was going to need to be a priority for Michigan. They obviously did not do a very good job with that. What did you see from this Washington offense having so much success against Michigan here?
What really separates Washington and Michigan right now is Washington has a quarterback who I think you can believe in to go win you a football game. And you look at Michigan, you got three guys who I have zero confidence can really make anything happen. They've all made big mistakes in big moments. Washington has a guy in Will Rogers who was under duress all game. I mean, Michigan was getting after him. And obviously, Washington still needs to build out the depth through their offensive line. That's really hard to do through the portal. So it has to be done kind of over time through recruiting. So they're not there. But you have a guy in Will Rogers who the ball comes out on time. He gets out to his playmakers, and they were making a lot of plays. I mean, credit to them. It was obviously a frustrating night for the Michigan secondary, but at the end of the day, I mean, the ball was getting out on time, was getting where it's supposed to be, and when they had their shot to hit big ones, they hit their big ones.
Yeah, I thought Jedd Fisch and Will Rogers were brilliant. I think they knew they couldn't really pass protect all that consistently. The ball was coming out quick. You were forcing Michigan to tackle in space. And when you have guys like Giles Jackson, we kind of said this when Jedd Fisch came over. Giles Jackson, I'm not sure, is an elite wide receiver. He's an elite playmaker. And we kind of said Jedd Fisch is going to figure out how to get him the football in space and go let him impact the football game. That's, I think, what Washington was able to do. And that quick game that Washington had was able to neutralize to an extent that Michigan pass rush. And I was kind of surprised Michigan, not really challenging a lot of soft zone coverage, what I'll say, and kind of giving Washington some of the quick game.
The problem is when Washington had chances to beat them over the top. I mean, they hit their play over the top. Giles Jackson did make that play. So again, it's Michigan can be a little frustrated, but that's just a difficult offense to deal with when Will Rogers is on and he's playing the way he was playing, and you have a play caller in Jedd Fisch who's really, really good at doing it.
Yeah, and you can tell Will Rogers is a really good fit in terms of what Washington wants to do. They don't ask him to make a ton of throws to the boundary. They don't ask him to push the ball down the field consistently. Yeah, he can make those throws. That's probably not his wheelhouse. What is his wheelhouse is the quick game, being accurate, on time with your footballs, and that's what Washington was able to do to give this Michigan defense so many problems. Though I think the other shot I want to have is Jonah Coleman continues to be such a monster in the running back room. I'd even say this. I know he finished with 18 carries. Am I stupid for even saying, I want to see more of Jonah Coleman? Because whenever this is a kid that, I think he's physically capable of taking 25 carries a football game. He grinds on you, man. You talk about yards after contact. You talk about forced missed tackles. It doesn't get better than Jonah Coleman. I think he's top 5 running back in the country, quite frankly.
The issue with having him take 30 carries a game is the Washington offensive line really probably isn't built to run that sort of offense. I mean, the ball's got to be in the air. It has to be in Will Rogers' hand a fair amount. And then Jonah Coleman obviously gives them more balance than I think anyone expected from this Washington team coming into this year. But I still got to think it got
I'd almost disagree. Even Washington heading into this football game was a top 25 team in terms of yards per carry. Look, the biggest shock for me from this Washington team is what Jedd Fisch has done on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Like, I was terrified in terms of what Washington would be heading into the Big Ten. Look, they're not elite along the lines of scrimmage, but they're significantly better than what I thought they were going to be heading into 2024. And I mean, if Jedd Fisch can continue getting those kind of bodies into this program, again, you said it best. You can't really rebuild the trenches in one offseason in the portal. Like, it's just impossible to do. Give Jedd Fisch a couple of cycles, and he gets this line of scrimmage where it needs to be to win football games at the highest level in the Big Ten. Because Jedd Fisch, I think, is one of the better offensive minds that you see in this conference. I think Washington fans have a ton of reason to be optimistic. Now, flipping sides, again, I'm pretty impressed with what Washington was able to do stopping the rushing attack. And Michigan made the change to Jack Tuttle. And Dill, this is where I'll let you kind of have your take on Jack Tuttle and the Michigan quarterback situation. Kind of fooled the boys a little bit. We thought we might have been back with Jack Tuttle, found something. And to be fair, like, Jack Tuttle came into this football game down 14-0, immediately led a few scoring drives. The same story with Michigan in these third quarters, man. Like, you look at the drive chart, 3 and out, fumble, interception, complete collapse from this Michigan offense in the back half of the third going into the fourth quarter here.
And again, it's just like even the drives that Jack Tuttle like engineered, he made a couple of nice plays. But at the end of the day, the offensive line, I thought, got going. They started to run the ball pretty effectively. That's more what was driving, and that's always what drives it. At the end, Michigan just doesn't have a guy. I mean, they've got 3 guys who I don't know how else to say it than just guys who you feel like are almost like losers. Like, you had JJ last year who was a winner. I mean, big spots. He played really good football. We got 3 guys who I just don't know what, like, when they're in big spots, I just have no faith that they're going to make things happen.
Yeah.
And then Washington, frankly, I mean, Steve Belichick's done a really good job with that group. I think their secondary is great. They obviously have some deficiencies up front, especially just having the size and the depth through the defensive line. But they have some playmakers. They're able to create negative plays. And I think that crowd certainly had an impact because obviously penalties from Michigan were not helpful.
Yeah, and to Steve Belichick's credit, like, he gets super creative in terms of the fronts in the schemes. And so he's like, hey, we might not have an elite, although I think the linebackers are really freaking good for Washington.
Linebackers are great.
But we might not have an elite defensive line, but we're going to give you some different looks. We're going to try to put our players in some of the best positions we can. And I mean, like, again, I can't believe how much better than what I expected this Washington team is along the trenches.
Because Michigan was able to wear on them at times, but they were able to create negative plays. They were able to kind of use some of use what they have. A very good secondary who you can kind of leave out there, especially on a team like Michigan. And they were able to create some negative plays and get Michigan off rhythm. And you see when you do that against a team like Michigan, I mean, you can really stall them out on offense. And they did that in the second half.
Yeah, and you look at some of the key numbers. Like, obviously, Washington outgains Michigan by almost 150 yards, but like, if you would have told me that the time of possession was dead even, like, I could have told you that Michigan was probably not winning this football game. And again, I think Michigan had the time of possession at points in this football game, but when you have those consecutive 3 and outs, like, why is the defense, like, this is a Michigan defense that I think is still one of the better defenses in the country. It's so hard to put up elite numbers when you're on the field like so much in the span of 20 minutes. Like, we saw the same thing in the USC game where it's like Michigan's offense can't stay on the field. Michigan's defense has their back against the wall repeatedly in this football game. And they fought their tails off. But when you give Will Rogers, Jedd Fisch enough possessions, like, they're going to break through. They're going to start scoring some points until Washington figured out who they wanted to go after. And that was Jair Hill. Look, Jair Hill's been really good as a redshirt freshman for Michigan. We shouted him out earlier this week. He ain't gonna play good every game. Quite frankly, Will Johnson on the other side didn't have his best football game either. I think this was a combination of Washington, a very, very good football team. Michigan also probably not playing their best football. We'll probably break this game down a little bit more as we get into the rewatch. For the Michigan fans, we'll have a conversation about the quarterback spot. For the Washington fans, look, I think
you don't have those questions, which is obviously really nice. I mean, it's so noticeable when you don't have that guy, and when you don't have a guy that even like the defense can look at and like have any respect for, I feel like, or any confidence in that they're going to make things happen. And Will Rogers, I mean, you can see even Damon Williams come in, give him good minutes too, but Will Rogers being the backbone for what they do, I just think I mean, it was huge that they kept him. Obviously, after DeBoer left, it was kind of up in a flux. But like Jedd Fisch and Will Rogers have really, I think, masked like some real deficiencies in this Washington team. And again, I frankly, I think they're better around him than I thought they were going to be, but it's still not an elite unit. But those two minds and those wide receivers have done a really, really good job, I
Yeah,
think.
Jedd Fisch has done such a good job with the staff. Like, I think he made two just like home run hires, especially with Steve Belichick. Like, I can't believe how good this defense is for Washington compared to. And I'm not saying the personnel's bad for Washington, but like I had some big question marks about what the defense would be specifically along the line of scrimmage. Like they're answering that. They're like, how many teams in the Big Ten are you trusting more than Washington right now? Like you just saw USC lose to Minnesota. Like this Washington team feels dangerous to me, especially if they can clean up some of the red zone stuff, clean up some of the field goal kicking stuff. Because again, you clean that stuff up, this team could be 6-0 right now.
They're
We'll
easy
close it.
now. If
We'll
they
we'll we'll close it down there. Disappointing for the Michigan fans. Disappointing for the boys. Congratulations to the Washington fans. Fun game to watch for the boys. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later.